Hello everyone. Today, as you can see by my crown, we're going to be looking at a Disney work, in particular Princess and the Frog. And we're going to be looking at the original source material that the Princess and the Frog was trying to adapt from, and that is actually not the work that I think a lot of people are expecting. And that work is The Frog Princess by E.D. Baker. Now the interesting thing is that I feel like a lot of people would assume that I would be doing The Frog Prince by the Brothers Grimm, because that is really where the original concept and idea came from. But this is not the particular work that Disney decided to go for and adapt. That title belongs to The Frog Princess, like I mentioned. And basically it follows somewhat of a similar formula to what the Princess and the Frog was trying to do in the film, but there are some differences, and the problem is that I couldn't find a whole lot of research in regards to this particular book. So what I can and cannot provide is sort of limited, but I will try to explain and give you a sort of context as to what both of these works were trying to say, sort of the similarities, the differences, and all that jazz. So let's start off with our plot. And basically the plot of the original work follows a princess named Emma, or as her actual name is or aka Emeralda. So basically I guess she's just called Emma throughout the book, but her real name is Emeralda. But basically this princess is rather clumsy, and not only is she clumsy, she also has these witch-like powers. It says that she early on in life was given these kinds of powers, and I guess her being a princess, she kind of doesn't really know how to control them, and so on and so forth. But basically the plot follows this kind of similar scenario that we've seen in a lot of Disney adaptations, in the fact that she has to get married, and it's not to a guy that she wants to get married to. This guy is pretty much fairly stuck up. This guy is Prince Jorge from East Ardea, and so realizing that she does not want to marry this guy, she just decides to run away. And she comes across a swamp, and in doing so she discovers a frog who happens to be a prince. And he sort of explains his story to her, and she thinks that, okay, so in order to break this curse, I need to kiss you, and that'll be that. Unfortunately, this does not work. Similar to what we see in Princess and the Frog, she ends up becoming a frog as well. And then these two characters, the prince being Ardric, who is the heir of Upper Monte Vista, they just decide to go off together and figure out how they can solve this problem. And in order to solve this problem, they try to find the witch who cursed the prince, Ardric. And they end up realizing that the witch is no longer here. She's disappeared completely. And they decide to go to Gracina. And Gracina is a relative of Emma, and Emma being the niece. And it's also established too that she is fairly close to her niece. So I found that to be kind of odd, in that they didn't just go to her instead of just going straight to the witch who cursed him, because if she cursed him, why would she want to suddenly tell you how to uncurse him? So yeah, that kind of, again, fairy tale logic doesn't really make sense. But despite that, they go to her, and she basically tells them that there's certain tasks that you have to accomplish, and once you complete these tasks, you will be fully restored to your human form. And basically that's what they do throughout the rest of the book. And in doing so, Emma ends up falling for the prince, Eredic, and eventually they return to their human forms, and everybody lives happily ever after, pretty much. In The Princess and the Frog, however, it's sort of different. Tiana is not originally a princess. She is just a waitress who wants to save up money to own a restaurant. And unfortunately, she's unable to get the money. And this is really the kind of reasoning behind her planting the kiss on Naveen. Because since he has money, she thinks that he can provide her some kind of funds in order for her to get the restaurant that she wanted but did not get, because there was a higher bid for it. So that's really her reasoning. In the original work, as you can tell, there's really not a whole main reason as to why this princess suddenly would want to kiss this frog, but I guess it might just be established that, you know, she might feel bad for somebody who's in this kind of condition, and the fact maybe that the frog talks to her, like, maybe convinced her. I'm not sure, but that's kind of the original work's sort of logic. So basically, as the Frog Princess, or as the Princess and the Frog goes on, they both turn into frogs like in the original work, and they go on this kind of journey to figure out how to relieve their curse, and they come across a ton of really colorful characters like an alligator and a firefly, and then they come across the witch doctor, who's Mama Odie, who I guess in this case would be Granissa. I guess that is Disney's version of her, I guess. And they also have a villain, unlike in the original work, who doesn't seem to really have so much a villain as just obstacles. And yeah, maybe you could argue that the witch who cursed the frog, or cursed the prince, is the villain, but we never see her. There's no establishment of her. She just disappears, and they can never, they don't even end up finding her. So Disney really plays up this villain. They really do play up the Shadow Man. And the reasoning why he actually, and there's also, again, what the original work really didn't explain is why the prince was cursed in the first place. But in The Princess and the Frog, it explains that by saying that the Shadow Man wants to take over the town. And in order to do that, he needs to find a means to get to the mayor. And so, hence, he uses sort of Naveen as a way to get to that goal. And in doing so, he disguises him as a frog and has Naveen's servant sort of take the place of the prince, because he has this kind of medallion thing that if you just take somebody's blood, you can somehow wear it and then become the person. I guess that's Disney's logic in explaining the story, but there's a reason established as to why the villain curses the prince. But basically, it doesn't, the Princess and the Frog also doesn't follow the original work in the idea of tasks. In the end, the voodoo lady doesn't really give them a whole lot of answers, and other than you have to dig a little deeper, and then maybe you'll figure out, you know, what you need to do. But well, she does explain the whole scenario of you know, you have to kiss a princess, and it has to be kind of true love, yada yada. And they feel like that they can use the mayor's daughter in order to break the curse, and that's how that ends up happening. It is the traditional kiss that ultimately breaks everything, from Disney's point of view. But that doesn't go well with the mayor's daughter, because she's only princess for like a day, I guess, and then she's no longer a princess anymore. So when she kisses Naveen, it doesn't do anything. So yeah, already from what I've explained to you, you can kind of see that The Princess and the Frog is fairly complicated in its plot structure. It's nothing like a lot of the other Disney films that are a little bit more straightforward and to the point. There's just a lot of details. But the main thing that you have to get around is that ultimately Tiana's the one who breaks the spell, because she ends up marrying Naveen in frog form, and therefore that's how the spell works, because she automatically becomes a princess. So yeah, that's really their logic. So that's how basically the Disney work kind of ends. And I didn't even talk about all of the various details that are in the Princess and the Frog, because there are a lot. But that's really the basic plot of this entire movie. As far as characters are concerned, there is no Ray, the Firefly. There's no alligator in the original work. The only somewhat side characters, I guess you could say, in the original work are a bat, who I guess was held hostage by the witch that cursed the prince, and they managed to find the bat and set it free. It's the same with a snake. They also find a snake and set him free, and the snake brings them back at some point to the castle, because I guess they end up getting, obviously, probably lost and figuring out, like, oh, where do we go, and how do we find this witch, and how do we find this witch, and yada yada. So it's kind of like that. And apparently this world, unlike it taking place in New Orleans in The Princess and the Frog, this story takes place in sort of like a fictional world called Greater Greenwood. So yeah, that's kind of the princess's kingdom, Greater Greenwood. But I would say, despite these various kinds of differences that these two works share, it seems like that the tone is sort of similar. It's fairly lighthearted, fairly humorous. There might be maybe a couple of dark moments, again, with the fact of having, this curse being put on someone. That could be, I guess, a little bit kind of odd or creepy for children. But for the most part, it's kind of happy-go-lucky. It's comedic. Emma the princess is a fairly active princess in that she basically is doing all of the work. She's kind of the savior for this prince, because he kind of doesn't know really what to do, and she sort of provides this kind of guidance, and again, she has this kind of magic too. So she has these kinds of traits that I think help carry the original work forward, and maybe provide humorous moments as well as touching moments. It seems like the prince, for the most part, takes a backseat. But I feel like in The Princess and the Frog, it's about both the prince and the princess sort of learning a lesson. Like Tiana learning the importance of community, the importance of family, the importance of leisure, the importance of taking time to appreciate the people around you, and not always think about doing work. And also Naveen sort of learns the importance of working hard and trying to achieve something, and not just looking at everything as a and looking at life as a game and as something that's fun. There's a lot of other things that are important, and that has to do with trying to accomplish something and trying to take life a little bit more seriously. And I think this really creates a believable love between the two, and you'll see this throughout the film and how it progresses. In the original work, it seems genuine too, and the fact that they have to go through various tasks together, I think it would make sense that they would develop a bond and that they would get closer in a way. So I think from the research that I found, it's the romance seems somewhat believable. It's just that the original work is just fairly simple. It's just, it only has these two, it has a less straightforward way to break the curse, but it doesn't seem like that the plot points that they have to get to are all that complicated, and it seems to be explained enough to where a child could understand it. Whereas I feel like the plot in Princess and the Frog, Disney felt, I think, that they had to make it a little bit more grand and a little bit more fleshed out. This might work for some people, it might not. But I think the original work is worth checking out if you like these kinds of fairy tale-esque stories. I thought it was really interesting that it wasn't really the Brothers Grimm work that they used, it was this one. And it seems like it creates a believable scenario. I mean a believable scenario in the sense of a fairy tale. It captures, I think, the essence of a basic fairy tale from looking at it from an adult perspective. The Princess and the Frog just takes that that kind of simplistic plot and makes it a little bit more unique and twists certain things around and adds certain things and takes certain things away. But there is a lot more context there than there is in the original source material, because the original source material follows the basic structure of a fairy tale formula, and Princess and the Frog doesn't really do that. So that could be refreshing for some people. For others it might not, but I think the major difference really is just really how the plot's structured, and the fact that Emma is sort of living this princess-like lifestyle and not really and doesn't really have the same kind of character traits as Tiana does, who's very down to earth, hardworking, and it feels like Emma is a little bit more up in the clouds, but still wants to kind of choose her own destiny in the same way like Tiana. But again, they do have these kinds of different lifestyles that I think make them different characters completely. But beyond that, they still seem to be at the forefronts of these stories, which I think which I find to be interesting. And they seem to offer a means to get the audience invested, and they are the main source of the resolution to the plot, and I think that's really cool to see. So I think that's really all I can say about these two in particular. I think they hold up they both hold up well. It just depends on what you would prefer. If you prefer a fairy tale that kind of pays attention more to details, you would probably like Princess and the Frog. If you don't mind the simplicity of the original work, I would suggest checking it out and deciding for yourself. But I think that's really all I can say about it. There's not a really whole lot else to the original work so much. There is a mother aspect in there, kind of similar to with Tiana, but she doesn't seem to be involved all that much within the plot, other than the fact that in the original work it's established that the mother and daughter don't really kind of get along as much, and in the Princess and the Frog, it seems like they just get along. It's just that her mom wants Tiana to look at things through a different perspective, but Tiana just doesn't see this in the beginning and just kind of focuses on dreams and not on the people that are around in her life. So I think that's really ultimately all I can say. I think they're fairly straightforward in how they're constructed. It's just that there's just more details in The Princess and the Frog, and it just seems like it goes more into a different direction in explaining things compared to the original work that's kind of just there and presents itself in a way that's very easy to follow. But if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them, but I think that's really all I can say. But I hope to see you all in the next video, and take care.